Acadia After Dark is a horror podcast, and as such, may not be appropriate for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. The night is still as you sail off the rugged coast of Maine. The darkness stretching out like an endless inky black expanse around you. A thick fog creeps in, curling around your boat like grasping fingers. The silence is unnerving, broken only by the soft, rhythmic lapping of waves against the hull, each sound magnified in the stillness. You pull your jacket tighter, but the chill that creeps down your spine feels otherworldly. Something the bitter ocean wind can't explain. Then you see it. At first it's just a shadow, a faint outline swallowed by the mist. But as it emerges, your breath catches. A ghostly ship takes shape before your eyes. Its ancient sails torn and fluttering as though caught in a storm that isn't there. The wood looks gray and splintered, worn by ages and weathered beyond repair. A shiver grips you as an undeniable cold emanates from its spectral presence, wrapping around your boat and clawing its way into your bones. Your eyes widen as you notice movement on the ship's deck. Shadowy figures glide across the weathered planks, their translucent forms flickering like faint candlelight, dim and fragile against the fog shroud. Though the scene unfolds in eerie silence, you could swear you hear whispers, fragmented and distant voices carried on the faint breath of the wind. They drift through the darkness like forgotten echoes, filling the air with the weight of centuries lost. You're rooted to the spot, trapped between awe and raw terror. The ship inches closer, its ethereal glow bleeding through the fog and illuminating the dark waters below. The figures aboard move with a haunting elegance, their movements both languid and purposeful. Their eyes, pale spectral orbs that seem to burn without heat, lock onto yours, and it's as though they see you, fully and completely, their gaze reaching deep into your soul. You take an instinctive step back, heart hammering in your chest. They are aware of it. You know it. And yet there's nothing you can do. Nothing but wait. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the ghost ship begins to fade, its tattered sails dissolving back into the mist. The shadowy forms aboard linger for a moment longer, watching you with eyes that seem to promise secrets too dreadful to uncover. And then they're gone. The fog recedes, pulling its ghostly presence with it, leaving the night quiet once more. You stand in silence, the chill still clinging to you as your heart struggles to return to its normal rhythm. The encounter was brief, but its mark remains, etched into your memory like a haunting melody. The darkness of the ocean feels heavier now, its depths darker and more mysterious. You know you've witnessed something extraordinary. You can't help but wonder whether the ghost ship will return again, carrying its silent crew and ancient secrets into the night.
At times, the fisherfolk of Maine are startled to see the form of a ship, with gaunt timbers showing through the planks, like lean limbs through tears in a pauper's garb, float shoreward in the sunset. It is a ship of ancient build, with tall masts and sails of majestic spread, all torn, but what is her name? Her port? Her flag? What harbor she is trying to make, no man can tell, for on her deck no sailor has ever been seen to run up colors, or heard to answer a hail. But in calm or storm, in calm or ebb of tide, the ship holds her way until she almost touches shore. There is no creak of spars or whine of cordage, no spray at the bow, no ripple at the stern, no voice, no figure to utter. As she nears the rocks, she pauses then, as if impelled by a contrary current, floats rudder foremost off the sea, and vanishes in twilight. Marswell is her favorite cruising ground, and her appearance there sets many heads to shake. While it is not inevitable that ill luck follows her visits, it has been seen that burial boats have sometimes had occasion to cross the harbor soon after, and that they were obliged by wind or tide or current to follow her course and leave the port.
Welcome back to another chilling episode of Acadia After Dark Campfire Story. I'm your host, Reverend Redbeard, and tonight the crackle of the fire accompanies the whisper of the waves as we venture into the haunting depths of Maine's treacherous swamp. Our tale brings us face to face with the ghostly legacy of the schooner Dash, a vessel whose shadow still lingers in the fog of time. Our story begins in the early 19th century, during the tumultuous days of the War of 1812. The Dash was no ordinary ship. It was a privateer schooner, a sleek predator of the seas, commissioned by the United States to strike fear into British merchant vessels. Built in Freeport, Maine, in 1813, her design was flawless, swift, agile, and deadly. The Dash quickly earned its reputation as one of the fastest and most feared vessels to sail under the American flag. The Dash's maiden voyage was a mission of trade bound for Santo Domingo to exchange New England's goods for precious coffee. Owned by Seward and William Porter, the schooner's purpose wasn't just to navigate the water. It was built to master them. At 223 tons, this brig was crafted for unparalleled speed, a vessel that streaked across the waves like a shadow, leaving her foes outmaneuvered and defeated. As she sailed down the American coast, her name proved prophetic. She didn't just move fast, she moved remarkably. A blur of polished wood and taut sails against the horizon. But speed was only a part of her story. Behind the Dash's glimmering facade lies a darker history, a legacy of whispered legends, ghostly sightings, and tragic ends. Tonight, we pull back the veil on a ship that wasn't just built to haunt the seas. It was destined to haunt the ages. Helmed by the formidable Captain Edward Kelleran, the Dash embarked on her first treacherous missions, manned by a seasoned crew of 40. Her reputation as a swift and cunning adversary was cemented early on when she encountered a British man-of-war ship, its towering presence casting a menacing shadow across the waves. Yet true to her name, the Dash lived up to her moniker, slipping through the enemy's grasp with speed and precision. Though the schooner returned to Portland battered and bruised, her spirit remained unbroken, a testament to her resilience and the ingenuity of the crew. Determined to outmatch any foe, the Dash underwent significant upgrades before her second voyage. Her transformation was nothing short of dramatic. Off came the foremast, and in its place a sturdier spar and square sails rose to the skies. The sleek topsail schooner evolved into a hermaphrodite brig, boasting an abundance of canvas that would propel her into greater speed and glory. This metamorphosis solidified her as one of the most formidable ships to stalk the seas, a predator built for power and agility. Her reputation grew with each mission, her name whispered in hushed tones across coasts and ports. Captain Kelleran oversaw 2 successful smuggling trips that showcased the Dash's unparalleled swiftness and strategic prowess. Between 1813 and 1814, Kelleran would complete 3 daring voyages, his command unyielding and his crew undefeated. But the Dash's destiny was about to take another turn. In 1814, President James Madison's decree changed the course of her story forever. The Dash was commissioned into service as a privateer. Her speed and cunning now weapons in America's fight against British ships. Her new captain, the daring William Campbell, took the helm as her mission transformed into one of aggression and reward. Under Cammott's leadership, the Dash thrived as a terror of the seas, capturing 15 British vessels in her illustrious run without losing a single man. Her victories painted a portrait of invincibility. But this streak of triumph would prove fleeting. Armed with a long 32-pound pivot gun alongside 6 broadside guns, the Dash was as much a defensive marvel as she was a sleek courier of goods. She carved swift paths from Maine to the warm waters of the Caribbean, usually laden with sturdy New England lumber on the outbound journey, and returning with rich cargoes of coffee. But these were no ordinary waters. Between the West Indies and New England, danger lurked on every horizon, as British ships prowled the seas with ruthless efficiency, eager to intercept and plunder unwary vessels. The Dash, however, was no easy prey. Her true weapon was her unmatched speed. Her guns were merely her last resort, meant only for those dire moments when escape was no longer an option. She relied on her fleet designed to outpace her pursuers, slipping through the shadows of the sea like an uncatchable wraith. But even the fastest ship needs an edge, and British ships, with their wealth and resources, gained theirs by lining the bottom of their keels with copper, a technique that reduced drag and allowed them to glide through the water with greater speed. For the Dash, copper was a luxury her owners couldn't afford. Instead, at each port she visited, the ship was careened, tipped onto her side, so her crew could meticulously coat her hull in a mixture of soap and tallow. This homemade solution worked wonders, reducing drag and allowing the Dash to maintain her reputation as one of the swiftest vessels on the seas. With her hull glistening and her sails taut against the wind, the Dash continued her journeys, darting between ports and evading British ships with uncanny skill. But as the War of 1812 raged on, the stakes climbed higher. British forces grew more aggressive, launching attacks on nearly any American vessel in their sights, in a calculated effort to disrupt supply lines and cripple the fledgling nation's commerce. By June of 1814, it was no longer enough for the Dash to evade her enemies. The call to arms grew louder, and the sleek schooner underwent yet another transformation, this time to meet the needs of war. Dash's metamorphosis into a warship was like a rebirth. Her small guns were replaced with 2 formidable 8-pound cannons, their gleaming barrels a symbol of her newfound aggression. Additional modifications outfitted her with the strength and power required to stand her ground in battle. The merchant vessel was now gone. replaced by a lean, deadly privateer poised to claim her place as a weapon. On June 18, 1814, precisely 2 years after the War of 1812 was declared, the Dash received her commission, an official decree that marked the beginning of her new life. The parchment carried words that would forever alter her destiny.
The commission authorizes Captain Camet to detain, seize, and take all vessels and effects to whomsoever belonging, which shall be liable thereto according to the law of nations and the rights of the United States as a power at war, and to bring the same within some port of the United States in order that due proceedings may be had thereon.
These words gave the Dash free rein to prowl the seas, striking swift and merciless blows against the enemy ships and returning with the spoils of war. Signed by none other than President James Madison and the Secretary of State James Monroe, the commission was both a directive and a promise. A declaration that this schooner was no longer merely a vessel but a beacon of American resilience in the face of British aggression. But the life of a privateer was far from predictable. On voyages where the Dash was heavily laden with precious cargo, the looming threat of British ships forced her crew into some difficult decisions. The schooner's speed was her greatest weapon, but even the Dash could falter under the weight of her holds. When danger struck, the only way to outrun her pursuers was to sacrifice her bounty, heaving precious goods overboard to lighten the ship and gain critical speed. Every crate of rum or coffee thrown into the ocean represented lost profit, turning moments of peril into bitter compromise. Yet it was the capture of enemy vessels that truly brought wealth to her crew and owners. A single successful seizure could mean the difference between bankruptcy and untold fortune. On August 21st, 1814, fate smiled upon the Dash off the shores of beautiful Bermuda. Through the haze of sunlight glinting off the waves, her sharp-eyed crew spotted a sail in the distance. A British merchant ship called Five Sisters. Bound from Jamaica to Bermuda, her holds brimming with rum and cocoa worth $6,000, a fortune equivalent to approximately $110,000 today. With the wind filling her sails and her cannons ready, the Dash sprang into pursuit, her speed leaving the British vessel little hope for escape. When the crew seized the Five Sisters and her precious cargo, it was a triumph that restored their fortunes and brought renewed life to the company back home in Maine. By the time the Dash returned to port, her owners and crew had achieved profitability once more, a reminder that fortune on the seas was as elusive and fleeting as the wind. Though the Dash was a vessel of unmatched swiftness and cunning, her days were not without peril. Every pursuit, every storm, every encounter with the enemy carried with it the shadows of danger, a specter that lingered just beyond the horizon. In September of 1814, the Dash set out on her sixth journey, this time under the command of a new captain. George Bacon took charge of the vessel, steering into a fresh chapter of its renowned saga. With a reduced crew of just 35 men, a far cry from the larger teams that manned her previous expeditions, the Dash was leaner, her operations streamlined for maximum efficiency. Despite having fewer hands aboard, the Dash's effectiveness remained unmatched. Her crew's sharp tactics and the schooner's superior design allowed them to outmaneuver and overpower numerous British ships. Each successful capture bolstered not only the fortunes of her sailors and owners, but also the pride of Freeport, the coastal town that had become synonymous with her triumphs. The Dash wasn't merely a ship to the people of Freeport, she was a beacon of their resilience and ambition, a vessel that carried the weight of their hopes across the high seas. Under Captain Bacon's leadership, the Dash sailed confidently into the autumn haze, her victories adding to her storied reputation. Yet as her exploits grew, so too did the whispers of a fate veiled in mystery. One that would anchor her not only in the annals of maritime history, but also in the chilling depths of legend. On her seventh voyage, yet another captain stepped aboard to guide the Dash through the icy waters of history. This time, the ship's helm fell to John Porter, a familiar name from Freeport's coastal lineage. Porter's tenure began in the crisp autumn air of October 1814 and carried through the biting cold of January. Under his command, the Dash continued her streak of success, capturing several schooners and adding to her growing reputation as one of the most formidable privateers in Maine's storied maritime history. But Captain Porter's voyage was destined to be her last. The Dash's victories had come at a cost. Her fame brought with it an ever-present risk, and her fate was about to take a tragic turn. With great success came the shadow of peril, and the Dash was poised to embark on a mission that would forever enshrine her name in both glory and legend. On a snowy January day in 1815, the Dash set sail from Freeport on what would unknowingly be her final mission. The war was nearing its end, but word had not yet reached the American coast from Belgium. Unaware of peace's imminent declaration, the Dash and her crew raced out into the open sea, with the vigor of war still fueling their resolve. As if heralding her departure, the Dash found herself in playful competition with another privateer, the Champlain. The two ships, driven by camaraderie and rivalry, launched a spirited race from Portland Harbor, but the Dash's legendary speed proved still unmatched. Her sails caught the wind with elegant precision, and she surged ahead, leaving the Champlain behind to fade into the distance. As the Dash raced toward the horizon, a nor'easter began to roll in. A fierce and unforgiving storm that swept across the sea with merciless intent. The snow fell heavier, the wind howled louder, and the ocean churned with ominous fury. The Dash's disappearance into the storm marked the beginning of her final haunting chapter. What followed was no mere maritime tragedy, but the genesis of a ghost story that would ripple through generations, tying her name to the misty shores of Maine forever. As the Champlain veered southward, her crew watched from their decks transfixed as the Dash cut through the gray horizon. Her sails billowed against the rising winds, the proud schooner surging forward with a grace and speed that seemed almost supernatural. But the air felt heavy, a foreboding stillness creeping over the water despite the growing storm, and moments later they saw it, an ominous wall of fog spilling across the sea like a living thing. It hurtled toward the Dash, engulfing the ship and swallowing her whole. The schooner's ivory sails, once stark against the stormy sky, vanished into the oppressive haze, leaving behind only a ghostly impression on the minds of those who watched. The crew of the Champlain stood in uneasy silence, the weight of what they had witnessed pressing down like the storm clouds above. For them, this would be the last time the Dash was ever seen. Once she slipped into that impenetrable mist, the Dash seemed to cross a threshold between the known and the unknowable. Her fate sealed by forces far beyond the reach of her crew. That fog just wasn't natural. It moved like something alive, tendrils of damp air grasping hungrily at the schooner, veiling her in an eerie shroud. As the storm rolled in, snow and rain lashed the waves, masking any trace of the proud vessel's path, and minutes turned to hours. The whitecap swallowed everything, leaving only an empty, churning ocean in their wake. Freeport's docks waited anxiously for her return, but the Dash never came home. Each passing day brought new questions and deepening sorrow. As hours turned to days, the once bustling town grew quiet, its residents haunted by the growing realization that something extraordinary and terrible had taken place. The Dash, the ship that had brought them fortune, pride, and hope, had simply vanished. Weeks stretched into months, and whispers of shipwrecks and storms filled the air. Not a single scrap of evidence. No wreckage, no bodies, no answers ever surfaced. The collective grief of Freeport settled over the town like a storm of its own. 60 souls, husbands, sons, brothers, were all lost, taken by the sea in an act of defiance that no one could fully explain. Grief mingled with unease, giving rise to the legends that would shadow the Dash for centuries. The unnatural fog, the way the storm seemed to target her, the eerie silence that followed her disappearance, all of it whispered of something beyond comprehension. Was it nature's fury, or was the Dash claimed by something far darker, lost to a realm beyond the reach of mortal man? But the Dash's tale refuses to fade into history, her presence lingering like a shadow across the waters of the Maine coast. In the years following her disappearance, whispers of eerie encounters began to surface. Stories told in hushed tones of whispers and fishermen and sailors who claimed to have seen the legendary schooner. Those who ventured into the fog-shrouded seas spoke of a ghostly ship, its pale spectral outline gliding silently through the waves as though untouched by time. The air around her would grow unnaturally cold, and the rhythm of the ocean seemed to falter as she passed. Some described hearing faint echoes, the cannon's thunder reverberating from nowhere, or the haunting strains of a fiddle carried on the wind like a melody from the beyond. These sounds, disjointed and fleeting, vanished as quickly as they had appeared, leaving behind a profound silence that settled heavily on those who heard them. One of the most chilling encounters took place in 1855. A group of fishermen from Freeport setting out on what should have been an ordinary day spotted the Dash near the waters where she had last been seen. Their accounts painted a vivid yet uncanny picture. The ship appeared not as the wreck of a long-lost vessel, but as if untouched by the passage of time. Her sails billowed full against the wind, her wood gleamed as if freshly polished, and her crew, silent specters on the deck, moved with haunting grace as if acting out a part in a movie played on repeat for time eternal. The fishermen, compelled by equal parts curiosity and dread, edged closer to the phantom schooner, and as their boat neared, the air grew heavier, almost suffocating, as if the fog itself had taken on a sentient presence. Then just as quickly as she had appeared, the Dash dissolved into the mist, leaving the fishermen frozen in place. The cold clung to them long after the ship had vanished, and they returned to the port shaken and silent, unable to fully articulate what they had witnessed. According to local folklore, the Dash is far more than just a phantom vessel. Its appearances are believed to carry a grim purpose. The legend claims that the ship returns to the shores of Maine whenever a descendant of one of the 60 lost crewmen takes their final breath. On these somber occasions, the spectral schooner is said to emerge from the mist, her ghostly sails unfurling to escort the souls that departed aboard for a fateful final voyage. Like Charon ferrying the newly dead across the river Styx, the Dash has become an otherworldly emissary, a guide between worlds. And just as the mythic Flying Dutchman haunts the oceans, Casco Bay bears its own spectral sentinel. The sightings of the Dash are as eerie as they are consistent. Concentrated around the rocky waters of Crab Island, Pumpkin Knob, and the fog-veiled coastline of Freeport. Residents and fishermen claim that on misty nights following the death of a descendant, the ghostly schooner can be glimpsed gliding silently through the fog. Its pale, luminous sails seem to glow with an otherworldly light, cutting through the darkness with an unsettling grace. Those who have seen the Dash speak of its chilling presence, the way it commands the waves with an unnatural calm, as if the ocean itself bends to its will. One of the most haunting accounts came from a lighthouse keeper stationed at Cape Elizabeth in the late 1800s. On a night thick with fog, as he stood watch against the merciless sea, the keeper claimed to see the Dash passing by. Her sails billowed full and proud, yet the air was still, the winds asleep in the heavy mist. The schooner moved silently, untouched by the crashing waves below or by the biting storm above. For a moment, the keeper stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the ship vanished into the ether, as if the fog had swallowed her whole. Left alone in the oppressive quiet, the lighthouse keeper questioned his senses, wondering whether the Dash had been a trick of the light or a manifestation of something far more sinister. The story has since passed into local legend, a reminder that the Dash is not just a ghost story, but a chilling presence that lingers in the lives and deaths of those tied to her ill-fated voyage. Theories surrounding the Dash's disappearance have kept Maine's maritime communities guessing for centuries, each explanation adding to the layered enigma of her fate. Some believe the schooner met her end during the ferocious nor'easter that rolled in as she sailed out of Portland Harbor. With snow whipping through the air and waves rising like walls of liquid fury, it's easy to imagine the storm overwhelming even the most capable crew. Perhaps the gale pushed the Dash too far into the icy abyss, her sturdy frame no match for nature's raw, relentless power. Others propose a grimmer, yet plausible scenario. Navigational error in the chaos of the storm. The Atlantic is notoriously unforgiving, and the waters off Maine are riddled with hidden dangers. Jagged rocks and unseen shoals that lie in wait for the slightest misstep. One mistake, compounded by the confusion of the storm, could have easily led the Dash into treacherous waters and a watery grave. Then there's the theory of panic among her crew. It's said that the Dash may have been carrying volatile cargo, goods that under certain conditions could ignite and explode. Imagine the fear that would grip her crew as they realized the danger, the desperation as they abandoned the vessel in a frantic bid to survive. If true, this theory could explain why no trace of the Dash or her crew was ever found. But even this explanation feels incomplete. Did they truly vanish into the abyss without a single survivor to tell the tale? And yet the most tantalizing theory ventures far beyond the rational. Many believe the Dash is no ordinary ship, her spirit lingering in the waters off Maine as an eternal specter. These whispers suggest the vessel was doomed not by a gale or human error, but by forces that transcend mortal comprehension. According to fishermen who ply the seas near her supposed last location, there is an undeniable chill that clings to the air, a palpable sense of unease. Some have reported hearing muffled voices, a low hum carried by the wind, or the faint creak of rigging that sounds as though it's coming from a ship that cannot be seen. For those who dared to venture closer, fleeting glimpses of a shadowy outline and a faint glow beneath the waves have left them questioning their sanity. The legend of the Dash has grown into something far more ominous than a simple tale of tragedy. It is a ghost that lingers in the soul of Maine's coastline. Its presence felt in every foggy night and every shadow that ripples across the waves. Her spectral return, shrouded in mist and tied to the deaths of the descendants of her lost crew, is a haunting reminder of the unrelenting grip of the sea. The ocean never forgets. Neither does the Dash. Each sighting of the ghostly schooner pulls its strings of fear and sorrow. An eerie echo of 60 men who vanished aboard her on that storm-racked day. The tales of her luminous sails cutting silently through the darkness evoke a suffocating sense of dread. A reminder that even the most triumphant vessels can be claimed by forces beyond understanding. The Dash isn't merely a warning about the dangers of the sea. She is the embodiment of its cruelty. A vessel cursed to forever remind us of the cost of challenging its depths. To those who glimpse her ethereal form, the apparition carries a heavy burden, an emotional resonance that chills to the bone. Fishermen who spot her near Crab Island or Pumpkin Knob often return to shore shaken, hollowed by her spectral gaze and the profound loneliness she exudes. The ghostly ship doesn't just haunt the waters, it haunts those who encounter her, filling them with the dreadful knowledge that the Dash is searching, calling out for the lost souls she carries in her shadow. And then there's the ship's chilling role as the harbinger of death. The idea that she returns to claim the souls of her crew's descendants transforms her from a mere ghost story into something far darker. A vessel of doom, a reminder that some bonds cannot be broken, not by time or distance, not even death. The Dash sails not for the living, but for the lost. Phantom that binds Maine's waters to the uncanny, the unexplainable. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the unknown. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest explorations into the dark history and folklore of Maine. Don't forget to share your own encounters or favorite legends in the comments below. Who knows, they might just make it into a future episode. Until next time, keep your lanterns lit. Stay safe out there, hikers.